Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. Shabbat Shalom. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson. And I'm going to start it off with 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. And you have the spiritual demon Satan, which is the top, left-handed angel of the Most High. He does the bidding of the Most High. And contrary to, popular belief, he doesn't have any free will of his own. There was no fallen angels or a war in heaven. That's just, Greek mythology, if you will. And then you have his physical counterpart on the face of the earth, which is the nation of the biblical Edomites, who are known as these so-called white people, who, as you can clearly see, they push, these demonic agendas, everything completely contrary to the scriptures out here. But I opened up the video with this verse to preface this clip from Hawks Podcasts / MDG 650 Hawks YouTube channel titled Treasury Secretary Scott Bessant calls the left domestic Al-Qaeda. And, Hawk, he just been going in with, all these videos he's posting, just, going against the Trump administration or dictatorship and exposing a lot of things they're coming down the pipeline with. And in this video, he'll be talking about how, Scott Bessant, the Treasury Secretary, and, pretty much just the Trump administration, is labeling those on the left as equivalent to Al-Qaeda. And he brings up very beautiful points that look at how the U.S. responded to Al-Qaeda and so-called Islamic T3rrorists groups after 9/11, enhanced interrogation or torture, people getting sent to Guantanamo Bay, which are nothing more than concentration camps, surveillance, all these things. And again, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. All these talking points are going to be used to ultimately come against the men of the Lord, the prophets, chiefly of GMS or Great Millstone, as well as the brothers that come in the spirit of GMS, and really just the Hebrew Israelites as a whole, because, with the men of the Lord preaching this word, as it says in Matthew 24, verse 14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. With us on the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this, it's bringing about the end of this age of the heathen Gentiles, chiefly of Esau, Edom's rulership, and the elites are scrambling to, keep their kingdom from going down. As it says in Revelation 12, verse 12, for the devil is come down in great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. So they're about to pull out all the stops to demonize us and label us as T3rrorists, black identity extremists, what have you. And we know, according to the scriptures, that Yahushai, the Son of the Most High, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus, they labeled him as a transgressor, as a rebel, as somebody going against the power structure falsely. He was falsely accused. And as it also says in the scriptures, the servant is not greater than his master. What Yahushai went through with the persecution, expect to go through the same. Which brings me to Isaiah 53. I'm going to read verses 11 to 12. He, speaking of Yahushai, shall see of the travail of his soul and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Yahushai dying, for the nation of Israel and the nation of Israel only. His blood, opening up that grace period for us with the elect right now, who are the only ones that are, going to be saved from these coming calamities. while the, 2/3 of our people in America are going to get cut off, though they're going to be reborn righteous into the kingdom of heaven. But just because the elect are ultimately going to be saved, it doesn't mean that we're not going to go through the fire as Yahushua went through the fire. Salakia. Verse 12, therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. Yahushua, dividing the spoil with the elect, the 144,000 who, after they get beamed up onto the chariots and come back down, that's when the kingdom of heaven is going to begin to be established, where, Abaratazam of that number, hey, we're going to spoil you nations, put you into slavery, so you can start building up the kingdom of heaven. And we're going to get the first fruits of everything you have, from your gold and your silver, your natural resources, your daughters, your children for servants, you for servants, you name it. And he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. When Yahushua went on the cross, he had the two malefactors on his right hand and his left hand who were convicted, criminals. And when Yahushua was brought before Pontius Pilate, the wicked Pharisees and Sadducees had the people, say, crucify Yahushua, but give us Barabbas, a known criminal, killer, and rebel. And he bare the sin of many for the nation of Israel only, and made intercession for the transgressors. Now I'm going to go to Luke chapter 22, verse 37, which is, referencing that Isaiah. For I say unto you that this that is written must yet be accomplished in me. And he was reckoned among the transgressors, for the things concerning me have an end. So the key point being, he was reckoned amongst the transgressors, numbered amongst the transgressors, which is going to happen to us when this campaign to stop domestic teaism, or labeling groups on the left as equivalent to ISIS or Al-Qaeda take place. We're going to get rounded up amongst them. And, these other camps out here have done a good job at building up that case so that they can come against us. You had a Guerrilla Hebrew before he had his, his humbling moment, talk about how Yahushua was a black identity extremist. You had members of, I believe it was Sakari, I believe it was Sakari or IUIC, I'm trying to remember which one it was. They were showing up at anti, deportation protests with the Northern Kingdom, walking around holding the Mexican flag and other, Central and South American flags, which you could be labeled as somebody on the left who's going against ICE, going against a government institution, which, what have we been hearing about? The cartel putting tens of thousands of dollars of bounties on the heads of those in ICE, and say somebody on the left, goes through with it and deletes somebody. Hey, another thing, labeling those on the left as domestic teists, and anybody close to it being rounded up with them. And then you have IUIC doing all these marches and protests and stuff like that. And already our message, goes against Esau and his rulership. So we can easily and will be labeled amongst the transgressors. But now I'm going to play, the majority of this clip. But this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes. Oh, and also, I forgot, you've got some of these camps out here that have the weapon on them, while they're at camp. And when Sakari was at that anti, deporting people protest, when one of the members was moving around, his shirt lifted up and you could see the handle of his kinetic object on him. So it's just been a bad image all around that you other camps, have, put on the truth, and best believe Esau will, take all those things into account when he finally comes with that demonization campaign against us. Oh, and one more thing. You had one of those Israelite offshoot groups, burning the American flag online. And what did Trump talk about recently? Making that an offense to where you can go to jail for burning the U.S. flag. But again, fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I watched a video this morning from the Bulwark, from their Takes feed. You can see these at thebulwark.com on their website and their YouTube page. If you're a subscriber, everybody should subscribe to the Bulwark. Tim Miller put up a 15-minute video yesterday talking about Scott Bessent. He is our Treasury Secretary. And the video is titled, Scott Bessent is Losing It. It was earlier this week. Scott Bessent made some comments. He was on the Charlie Kirk show. It has different hosts now, obviously. And he spoke about how the assassination of Charlie Kirk is a domestic 9/11 moment, meaning 9/11 was foreign terrorists and the assassination of Charlie Kirk was domestic terrorists. And he talked about using a 9/11 style approach by the Treasury Department to go after the left and go after groups on the left and the funders of terror networks on the left and go after their financing. And he was talking about who financed Charlie Kirk's killer. There's no evidence that he was anything other than a lone actor. They have not been able to tie him to any political affiliation whatsoever. There's no evidence that he was connected to any left-wing groups in the United States. There's no evidence of a conspiracy or a plot or anything like that. But the Treasury Secretary of the United States spoke about using the full power of the Treasury Department to go after groups on the left in a 9/11 style approach. And Tim made the point that Scott Bessent was supposed to be like the adult in the room. He's a Wall Street guy. He's worth $600 or $700 million. He's supposed to be one of the responsible adults, and now he's out here talking like this. He said that these groups all have the same lasers that they use to blind our police officers. That they have lots of money, there's lots of organizing, and the Treasury Department is going to unravel it and root out these networks. We will take down those responsible for funding Charlie Kirk's killer. Nobody funded Charlie Kirk's killer. He got the gun from his grandpa. It was a gift. There's no evidence of any connection whatsoever. But he talked about doing a 9/11 style campaign against the left. And then he went on further to make some comments about, denigrating the No Kings protests coming up this Saturday. And I guess referring to the government shutdown, he said no kings equals no paychecks. So if government employees want to get paid, we have to have an authoritarian dictator in place, a monarch of some type. And there were a few.
And, with those No Kings protests that just passed, the Trump administration posted a video recently online of him in a King Trump fighter jet dropping shit on the protesters. So, hey, as it says in Isaiah chapter 19, verse 4, and the Egyptians, and this is speaking of the spiritual Egyptians as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8, these Americans, and the Egyptians, the Americans, will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord, Yahweh of hosts. And it's very well looking like, Trump is that fierce king and that cruel Lord set over America. And, it's highly spiritual that it was a No Kings protest referring to him. And it's just going to get much more authoritarian and violent going forward. As we can see, they're already talking about labeling those on the left, which the left can be a broad term encompassing everybody, pretty much anybody who's against, this administration's rule, as a Tist that can get a 911, style campaign done against them. And with that image that he posted, him in the fighter jet dropping shit on people, that reminds me of that movie Civil War from last year, which, if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. And to, the sincere Akim and Akwat that already have seen it, you need to go back and watch it, because it's becoming more and more, relevant going forward. And there's one scene where the reporters are on their way to Washington, D.C., and they're talking about questions to ask the president. And some of the questions included, Mr. President, how do you feel about, taking power for a third term? Hey, what have we been hearing? Trump 28, Mr. President, how do you feel about disbanding the FBI? And then the final question they were thinking about asking him, Mr. President, how do you feel about authorizing airstrikes against U.S. citizens? Food for thought.
A few things. First of all, this ties directly into Donald Trump's National Security Memo number 7. It ties into Trump's memo designating Antifa as a domestic terror organization. It ties into the rhetoric that...
And with them liking to label the Hebrew Israelites as the black Hebrew Israelites, what could that, be misconstrued as? Oh, you're pro-Black Lives Matter and you're pro-Antifa, because Antifa is also pro-Black Lives Matter. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices.
Trump and Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, Kash Patel, Tom Homan have been using lately when it comes to speaking about the left, and specifically when it comes to speaking about the No Kings protests this coming Saturday. Mike Johnson said last Friday, the left has a Hate America rally that's scheduled for October 18th on the National Mall in D.C. It's the pro-Hamas wing and Antifa people. And House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, he's the third highest ranking Republican in the House. He also said that it's a Hate America rally, and that Democrats are putting on this Hate America rally to appease the terrorist wing of the Democratic Party in the United States. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem recently said that Antifa, which has been designated as a domestic terror organization, it doesn't exist, is just as dangerous as ISIS in the Middle East. And so, again, it's like all of this stuff that Scott Bessent said, supposed to be one of the adults in the room, one of the reasonable people in this administration. It fits perfectly within the context of all of this shit. What is the psychology of someone like Scott Bessent? He's worth $600 or $700 million. What is he doing? What is he even doing? Is being Treasury Secretary that important to him? He doesn't believe this shit. He doesn't believe this stuff. He doesn't believe that there is a terror network in the United States that is on par with Al-Qaeda that pulled off 9/11 with funding from Saudi Arabia. Scott Bessent loves Saudi Arabia.
It's all a game with those at the top at the end of the day. Never forget that. 2 horns like a lamb, but spake as a dragon, as it says in Revelation 13.
I just wonder about any deals that are being made behind the scenes, but it's like, with him using this specific language and referring specifically to 9/11, and I've said this in videos before, Think about what this country did in
Listen
response to
closely.
9/11. We passed the Patriot Act, a bipartisan effort to eradicate people's civil liberties in this country.
Eradicate people's civil liberties, restricting what you're able to do and say, which another aspect of this is leading to the famine of the word, where, lessons like this are going to be labeled hate speech, to where they're going to be scrubbed from the internet. And then, as we're going to get into, they're eventually going to physically come after the men of the Lord. So, the men of the Lord are no longer going to be on the highways and byways preaching this word. So as we always tell you, sincere Akim and Akwat out there, hey, drink from these rivers of living waters while you still can, because very soon, that spiritual spigot is going to get turned off. And, just the other week, you had an instance where I think around 1 million or close to 1 million YouTube users weren't able to, access YouTube. And as the brother Amawan Gabar was saying, in at least regarding him on YouTube, he said, you could see a video there, but you couldn't click on it. So, hey, that fame of the word is right around the corner.
The NSA conducted all kinds of illegal surveillance on Americans inside the United States. We set up a global network of CIA black sites where we would rendition suspected Middle Eastern terrorists. We would kidnap them and take them to these black sites and torture them and waterboard them, because George W. Bush's administration had a memo saying that torture was now enhanced interrogations. And we threw people in Guantanamo Bay for decades without charges, without indictments, without trials, without any due process whatsoever. It's hard to, and now Scott Bessent is incorporating that. That's the new thing that he added this week.
And earlier this year, what was Trump talking about? He was talking about sending homegrown American criminals to foreign prisons, like in El Salvador, for instance. And lest we forget, you've got Alligator Alcatraz, in Florida. You've got the Cornhusker Clink, I believe, up in Nebraska, which is, their detention center. They're talking about reopening the literal Alcatraz. You've already got these detention centers popping up all across the country, which will be used on American citizens, especially you Israelites. But this is Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil, that deceiver, Esau Edom, shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried. Detention centers, concentration camps, you name it. And ye shall have tribulation 10 days, which just means a complete amount of tribulation for whatever your lot is. Be thou faithful unto death, because some of us will be martyrs for this truth. Hey, as it says in Revelation 20, and I saw those that were beheaded, for the testimony of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, and that didn't bend the knee to the beast or his image, or received his MARK, that micro C-hip implant. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life, being of that elect number. But now I'm going to go to Psalms chapter 64. I'm going to start at verse 1. And the header reads, Prayer for deliverance from secret enemies, the devices of Satan. To the chief musician, a psalm of David. Hear my voice, O power, in my prayer. Preserve my life from fear of the enemy. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who whet their tongue like a sword, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, labeling groups on the so-called left as domestic theists, or equivalent to ISIS or Al-Qaeda, and then rounding up, the Hebrew Israelites in along with it, that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not. They encourage themselves in an evil matter. demonizing the truth. They commune of laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? They they think that by labeling it as just going against those on the left as a whole, or just going against the administration, that gives them that dragnet to get a bunch of groups, and then just by extension get the men of the Lord caught up in it as well, us being numbered amongst the transgressors, and that nobody is just going to notice it. Oh, that's just another domestic Teist group, another anti-American group. Those are just black identity extremists. They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search, both the inward thought and every one of them, and the heart is deep. But the Most High shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly shall they be wounded. While some of us will get rounded up, when Esau makes his move against the men of the Lord, that's when the Lord is going to make his move against you. And that standard is ultimately going to get set up, as it says in Isaiah 59, verse 19. And when the enemy shall come in like a flood, that standard shall be set up. Brothers getting spiritual powers, angels intervening on our behalf, miracles like in the book of Acts taking place again, because we're in Acts 2.0. And ultimately, those nuclear missiles hitting America and wiping it off the face of the earth. Verse 8. So shall they make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. And with a lot of this information, it's Esau's own people exposing him, like Hulk, for instance. You would think Edomite would have everything to benefit from this, society, as they have been, for most of this country's history. But now that the elites are starting to turn against their own people, you got a lot of disgruntled Edomites, exposing, the wickedness that this government is, committing. This is Isaiah chapter 29. I'm going to start at verse 18. And in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of obscurity and out of darkness, the spiritual eyes and ears of the elect being opened, and, understanding the words of the book of the scriptures. As I said in Revelation chapter 5, and there was no one who could open these seals, but then, the roll was given, to the Lamb, speaking of Yahushua, who opened up the seals, and, through the Holy Ghost gave understanding, to, the elect, to understand the words of the scriptures. And as it's about to say, the meek also shall increase their joy in Yahweh, and the poor among men shall rejoice in the Holy One of Israel, because we see that we are the children of Israel, and that our punishment in America, was due to us going off, and that this isn't the status quo, and that soon we're going to be ruling in the kingdom of heaven with these heathens underneath our feet. For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off, which is taking place right now spiritually with the men of the Lord going into the scriptures to expose this man, revealing, the man of sin, the son of perdition, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And then what did it also say? Who shall consume him with his mouth, first the prophet speaking, and then consume him with the brightness of his coming, Yahushua's second coming, to make war against Esau and the heathens and to take away their rulership. And then the terrible one being brought to naught physically, verse 21, that make a man an offender for a word, laying those snares privily to trap the righteous, and shooting at them with those bitter words as swords, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just for a thing of naught. Coming up with these campaigns to label those on the left as domestic Teists, or equivalent to Al-Qaeda or ISIS or anything like that, and then using that dragnet to get the Hebrew Israelites caught up in it as well, so that we can be labeled amongst the transgressors.
Referring specifically to 9/11 and foreign terror networks, and saying that those same type of terror networks exist in the United States, and they're comprised of Americans, and they're domestic terrorist networks on the left. And he's going to use the full power of the United States Treasury to go after these groups, to go after their financing, to go after the funders, because he said...
That's it with this clip. But hey, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. With our spiritual eyes and ears, we're able to read between the lines and see what it's ultimately hitting for. But hey, though things are going to get bad out here, to you sincere Akim and Akwat out there, hey, don't be afraid. We know that these things must come according to prophecy, but then again, the standard will be set up, and Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, will protect his elect. But I'm going to close it out in 2nd Esdras chapter 16. I'm going to start at verse 70. For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. Hey, the Israelites, and even, it's going to be upon our whole nation, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans as a whole. But their main target is going to be those that know they're Israelites and they want to get their hands on the elect, especially the men of the Lord. Verse 71, they shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord, labeling them as domestic teas, extremists, and then going out and rounding them up and throwing them into prisons. Verse 72, for they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. Again, for the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried. But then shall they be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as the gold in the fire. That's when that standard's going to get set up. Hear, O ye my beloved, saith the Lord, behold, the days of trouble, Jacob's trouble, are at hand, but I will deliver you from the same. Be ye not afraid, neither doubt, for the Most High is your guide. And again, as it said at the end of Revelation 2, verse 10, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, if, that ends up being your lot. But I will give you a crown of life. As long as we endure anything that comes our way that this devil's going to be coming down with, hey, just hold on. You're ultimately going to receive that crown of life and be the first fruits in the kingdom of heaven of that elect number. But that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwat were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.